I am your speaker tonight, and I'm a little actually really glad this is being done virtually because I think I probably would have melted if I was on stage. I'm a introvert and I am not used to public speaking, so thank you all for bearing with me if I'm tripping over my words. Most comfortable at a desk doodling, but I'm really, really excited to be able to talk to you guys today. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Nice Moves means a lot to me. It helped me a lot just jumping me off into the world of motion design. And I know you guys are doing such good things and it's not easy work. So thank you, Natalia and the whole team for organizing everything, making it so flawless and easy. Yeah, thank you so much. With that, I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about myself. I went to UW Stout. Like I mentioned, Maddie went to school there also, and that's how I know her. And I know several of you maybe are at Stout or have been going or did go. But there's so many good schools in the area. That's just where I ended up. And I graduated with an animation degree with a minor in drawing. And I realized I just really, really, really like to draw. And I was like, how can I make money doing this thing? And I'm sure we've all asked that question, right? So Nice Moves really connected me to meeting professionals. I had the best mentor, Amy Schmidt, through Nice Moves, who helped me through my senior project. She's also doing great work, and I admire her so much. And I started with a couple internships in the cities, one at Make, which I know Natalia's working at right now. Super cool. Always doing amazing work. I was very thankful for the experience that they taught me there. That summer, I feel like I learned more than like I did in school because I remember I went back to school that semester and I realized everything they were teaching us was something I already learned on the job. So I have a huge, huge admiration for on-the-job learning and anything that you can get, like any kind of experience you can get professionally to help you learn and grow your career is honestly as beneficial as going to school, if not more so. So many online programs and classes that kind of just took off once I left school. I wish I could have been able to look into more. So after my internships, I started my career working at Motion 504, RIP. I don't know the full story on that, but I was just really sad to see him go. Many, many, many great people working there. So talented. But that's where I worked for about a year and a half to 2 years. And I ended up getting married during that time. And I moved to Eau Claire with my husband. And Eau Claire, Wisconsin is not as booming as the cities in terms of animation. So I was really like looking into like what my options were. Motion 504 was very amazing and flexible. So I would drive in about 3 days a week, 2 to 3 days, and I'd work from home a couple of days. And I was doing that for a while. I got a little burned out. It's a lot of driving. And then I got connected with Greg Stewart, who I also saw talk at Nice Moves, and we'd known each other through some sort of side project. I think it was the Advent calendar or something. Anyway, we connected. I learned that he got a job with Ordinary Folk, and I was so excited for him because that was like a dream place to work. And I was just so pumped for him. I went with Motion 504 to Blend Fest. Man, what year was that? It was before COVID.
I remember you talked about this on the Nice Moves Spotlight interview that we did like a while ago. We can totally try to link that in the chat for people later.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful. Yeah.
But I also think it's such a great example of like you talking about like, being friends, with Greg kind of like
connections are so helpful.
Yeah. And then when he got the Ordinary Folk job, you're like, oh my God, it'd be so amazing to work with them. And then,
yes. And that's basically that's the end of the story. Like that's where I was working since I had my baby. So truly that was just like a dream just to be able to be on their team. And the whole point of that whole dialogue is that connections super, super help. And so Nice Moves is just doing a really good job at connecting people. At Ordinary Folk, I started designing for motion as like my job. I was animating a few things at Motion 504, but I was mostly excited about design, and they took a chance on me at Ordinary Folk. And um, this is kind of about that experience of my also kind of learning on the job there too. So without much else explanation about that, I'll just dive into a couple projects
Yes.
that
Ooh.
I've been excited about. Yeah. This specific one with Ordinary Folk, I made it was like my last project before I went on my maternity leave. And I've been staying home since then and working part-time freelance. So this was kind of like the last like full-time gig I was working on. Um, the client ended up going a different direction because so many I don't know how many people's had this experience where they work on a job and then like their client gets new leadership and they decide to just totally switch, I don't know, totally switch their
Yeah.
direction. And so
They're
like
like,
the old
whatever
team just got fired. Yeah, I don't know. It was so weird.
whatever the previous guys were doing, it must be terrible because they weren't me and I'm here now. And yeah.
It was just so like that's happened a couple times where it's like these big companies just, I don't know, like fire their team and hire a new team. And the new team decides, no, we're not going to use that, even though we just paid for it. So thankfully, Ordinary Folk got paid for it because it was all finished and everything. It was just a matter of like, oh, weird, okay. But we could put it on our portfolio. We just got to name it something different. So they called it Mainframe. And we still had so much fun with it. It was super exciting to work on, and it was a really good experience. So um, I had a lot more involvement in like the whole process of this than as far as like the design goes. Many projects, you know, so much collaborative back and forth. This one I felt I really got some like creative freedom on, and I got to also direct this one, which is super nice. Art direct it. So it was really fun. I started with like some ideas of like what the client was about. Uh, they were this technology company who were kind of like bringing in more parts of their software and making the customer experience easier to use, blah blah blah, as so many tech companies are, right? um, so I kind of had this idea of starting in like this confusing world. This person's feeling boxed in. um, Cloud software became more like cluttered and confusing, and the person's still left in the dark. And then um, suddenly they're like opening a door into this new place. So these are my most initial ideas of that project, like my first ideas. A lot of the bad ones, just kind of getting them out there and like trying to organize it in a way that was like, okay, what's working and what's not. Um, Trying to decipher like what vibe we're going for. And oftentimes when we're doing sketches and storyboards, we make like a sort of key of what visual things in our storyboard represent. Like, what does darkness mean? Who's the character representing? Why does the character look this way to represent this? Like, what kind of colors are we thinking here? Textures. What do clouds mean? What does old networking look like? So a lot of this stage is sort of defining what those are, and it feels so much like a puzzle. So starting to put the puzzle pieces together there.
Wait, go back. I'm just
Oh,
curious,
sure.
is this, like, something that you would present to client? I just find it really interesting that, like, would you include that key and these, like you have, like, these little images
Oh, yeah,
collaged
yeah.
around the storyboards, or
That's a really good question. We'd probably like have a better client document. I think these were internal ones just to like help the team decipher like what I was thinking. Like you can see these little, can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see these little like thumbnails of references I put in there, which I'm sure you've seen some of these before, of things that I was thinking for each of these scenes, like what I was envisioning and like colors and stuff. So we probably wouldn't put that in a client document, but it's like we'd clean it up or export the images and then add like a key, like a cleaner key with more specifics. This is still very rough kind of ideas, hence this weird smiley. um, uh, but as far
Communicate
as
a
like,
lot.
yeah, we actually made, I do this a lot. And so they actually made like a Slack emoji out of it and we use it often. Um, but as far as like cleaner boards, they'd look like these, this was a client delivery. getting everything sort of like more consistent and cleaned up and better line work. And the key would be like typed out with a visual, like circles represent this, or like lines represent this. And that's kind of how our key would look. And we often deliver a sort of visual key with storyboards. That was something I learned from Ordinary Folk too. I never thought about working that way until with them. Everything should mean something and represent something, even if it's like implying a mood or something. So these were my sort of kind of cleaned up things. And even this, there was many changes afterwards. Like a lot of these boards, like, oh, it looks like they're surfing. It seems too playful. Like, got to take that out. Got to do something else. But they like this sort of jump into like a different world, and it elevates things. And then the ending, we had so many versions of, because this original idea of like pieces kind of coming together into this sort of, what are those things you put to your eyes and you twist them? Kaleidoscope? Is that right? Yeah. Where like it would be sort of a kaleidoscope type look. I thought it was super fun. I couldn't wait to design it. The client didn't go so much for that. Totally get it, because how many times do things change in the process? Like so many times. But we still got to do some style explorations using some of those frames and just to kind of kick things off. So with this delivery, we also delivered style explorations, which I have later. And then the client will give us feedback and say, yes, no, don't like this. And oftentimes in our deliveries, we have like one or two other designers also presenting their own storyboard ideas and concepts with their own keys and their own style explorations. So it's sort of like a collaborative process sometimes, and also sometimes more of an individual process. So we just kind of like send those out there to see like what the client will respond to. But I guess like the first order would be like sending a mood board and rough ideas like of what we think could work, then like initial sketches and storyboards, and then like a cleaner storyboard with some style exploration. And then like from there you get even cleaner storyboard deliveries. And then you move to Styleframes. So this was this like probably the 15th iteration, I'm going to be honest, but it was probably the fourth or fifth client delivery, where we kind of honed in on, they wanted a more human looking character. And then you have to ask yourself, like, okay, not ask yourself, ask the client, like, you're looking for like male, female, like undistinguishable, and so they wanted something a little more anonymous, but masculine. So we sort of had this figure that's still not super specific in a way, but it leans toward a more masculine look in like kind of height and breadth and everything. But kind of moving things around fairly gracefully once they're in like this mainframe world. So the person's moving things around and organizing things, and it all kind of resolves in the end where all the pieces sort of come together. So these are some of those frames for those initial storyboards. And then we had like character exploration. The top left here is like different ideas of like what the shapes could be like, how friendly, how like angular, curves, no curves. And then a lot of playing with colors, like super high contrast, this sort of like glitchy sort of look, or maybe like a more soft gradient ribbony approach. And then they ended up going for these. So these are based off of that latest storyboard. And they were also editing their colors along the way. Sometimes we've worked with clients where they're like developing their branding alongside projects we're doing. So it's really cool. Sometimes we sort of have the freedom to influence their branding, and their branding influences our work. So they developed a set of colors that they really liked that we ended up implementing here with a lot of blues and purples and pops of reds. And we decided on a little bit of noise to kind of create texture in a sort of like gradient smooth landscape, and kind of add dramatic lighting and highlights around this character to make him a little more interesting while still having like a sense of anonymity. So yeah, that's kind of what we landed on. These were the frames that I got to work on, which were super fun.
Hey, you do such a good job of like showing like these really sometimes abstract transitions in
mm,
panel form.
mm.
Is there something that you're thinking about in terms of like how to show the process of like an animated transformation happening in just a few panels?
Yeah, sorry, your question is how to show the process in a few panels?
Yeah, sorry if that wasn't super clear. I just mean to say, like, for example, like looking at the circle, like tracing moment that begins, like the way that I can see how the line is first going to swirl around him and then it's going to make
Yeah.
the circle and then the circle's born out of that. Like, even in the boards, I was really blown away. You guys are really good at basically creating that animatic feel in a still
Yeah.
board sequence. Is there just something that you've picked up along the way on how many panels are needed to show that
Uh,
transformation or anything that you've learned there and what's unclear?
that's a really good question. Super good question. That's something I've been learning along the way. With every storyboard delivery, we always make an animatic. So before we deliver it, the person who's putting the animatic together is uh, they'll give us like feedback on, okay, I think this moment feels too slow, or I think we need another frame here, like, or we need to stretch this a little bit, or this moment's way too long, like we got to add some stuff in or cut stuff out. So a lot of that process really helps to kind of see like, oh, to the timing of the script, I can kind of tell, the team can tell where we need more and where we need less. So it's a lot of back and forth that way too. Usually not like too much. The storyboard is pretty set out that way because you have to like put it to the script in the storyboard. But like as far as transitions go, that's a lot of the tweaking happens there when they're putting the animatic together for sure, which is super helpful feedback, and it does make the storyboard a lot more clear. Um, Animatics help so much because it's like the exact timing of it's the timing version of the animation. So yeah, that's a really great question. That's kind of what I've learned. And I think going through more projects, like at the beginning, um, I would do more animatics. And so like I kind of got a feel for like, like how many frames I might need to do some sort of transition to make it clear that this line is turning into a circle. Um, but it kind of all depends on like the script and how much time you have too. So does that answer your question?
I think so. It's definitely a very abstract question, but it was still helpful to just hear that it sounds like you guys are developing the animatic and storyboards kind of more in parallel.
Totally. Very much
Because
in parallel.
it
Yep,
depends
yep.
on the place. Because for us, a lot of times, we're sending boards before we're sending an animatic.
Oh, so
Um,
interesting.
um,
Oh.
yeah. So then I'm like, and then there are some times where we say, screw it, we're only sending animatic because we don't think it's going to read in board form. So like, there's all these
Well,
different,
yeah. I'm sure it depends on the project. Yeah.
yeah.
Especially if it's like a 15 or 30-second spot versus like a minute or 2-minute thing. Or a lot of times the projects I've worked on is like many deliveries out of one project. So it could be a minute project with a 30-second and a 15-second cut down. So it's a lot of
Yes.
making sure like, yeah, all those scenes work for the full and what scenes you can take for the shorter cut downs too. Yeah, and we make animatics for all those too. So yeah, that's interesting to know that.
I was gonna say, we had somebody in the comments talk about zooming in on some of the panels, but my thought on that is if you were open to just sharing the PDF of this with people
Oh,
afterwards, would you be comfortable with that or no?
I'll probably zoom in. I did realize there's a couple like symbol stuff in here that I probably should have taken out. I just
Oh,
totally for not a lot, but it's just like a couple. It wouldn't be recognizable unless I had pointed it out. These are fine. So
we don't have to
I
share.
can zoom in on the style frames.
Yeah, let's zoom in. Let's look
Yeah, yeah,
for a brief
for
minute.
sure.
Yeah.
I have also like more details on my website and stuff too of all the projects I'm sharing. So you can
Okay.
look through those as well. Or you can look on Ordinary Folks site for this project, and they also have more like BTS on that. Oh, it's getting weird on me now. I think it's flipping through
Oh,
slides.
No, but thanks for letting people know where they can find it. You don't have to
Yeah.
zoom in on everything, but yeah. All
Okay.
right, cool.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, okay, next up is a project I got to work on post baby, in nap times and after bedtime. Of I had the opportunity to work with Hornet on the Intuit Enterprise Suite project, um, with director Ite Tevel. I really hope I'm saying his name right. Super cool guy, and just love all of his work. So it was kind of a dream to be able to collaborate with them, and I do hope I can work again with them in the future. Very thankful for them working with my super wonky schedule. So I'm sharing this project too because um, I had my initial like really rough sketches for it. I used to save all of that. I had like stacks of computer paper in my in my filing cabinet of just all my notes and sketches for all my projects, and I just recently just tossed them. And it's kind of cool to look back on, but none of it really made sense anymore. So I included these because oftentimes I'm sketching like this very initially. Um, so they were kind of talking about in this project of this, it starts with live action of a person needing a solution to their business problems and everything's too confusing and they can't organize anything. And then it zooms in like into a turnaround of their head where we're finally like the animated portion is in their head and they're like in a tornado of just chaos and they can't organize anything. And then boom, into an enterprise suite appears and it makes everything clear and everything's kind of just in front of them and they have all the information. They can organize it and move it around. And then the animation zooms back out of their head into the live action world again, where they're like sitting at a desk with their coworkers and they're just like feeling very confident and like showing people what to do and they're delegating and they have all the information. So that was kind of the idea of the spot. And they asked me to kind of develop some ways of like what the animated portion could look like. Like, what does the chaos world of an organization look like? And how does Intuit solve that? And then how do we zoom back out of the head? And so these are my very, very initial sketches. I don't even know if we can call these sketches. I think it's more like brain burps or something. I don't know. But further from that, I did more rough, still like rough sketching, but a little more clear on how like we'd come out of the head, turn around to see the character within this sort of tornado of chaos, which did not end up being used because it would have taken too much time for the time frame they had. Which I'm learning that there's many different like time frames for different projects. With ordinary folk, I just got so comfortable with like having time to develop ideas. And then with this Hornet project, I was so surprised at how tight the turnaround was that it was kind of a whirlwind in itself. So I still have so much more to learn as far as like other companies and studios processes. Um anyway, so these are my
Can you
first
clarify
ideas.
a bit, like, on was there, like, a difference of expectation on how fast you had to deliver a design? Like,
Like,
if you had to compare the 2?
oh, from Hornet to ordinary folk.
Yeah.
Um I suppose the comparison is hard to make because I had less time just because of my schedule that like it kind of roughly equals out to part-time hours. So like I had like half the time of everybody else to kind of present ideas, I guess. So maybe that's partially why it felt fast, but like it all was still very much a whirlwind, like very, very, very quick turnaround. So um and I have worked with projects with ordinary folks since my baby, which has been like part-time hours still, but I think it just depends on the client's timeline. Some projects with ordinary folk were like, okay, they really need our help on this, and so we're gonna get out to them what we can in this time frame. And some were like, okay, we're starting with this client fresh. They don't have we always had a schedule because our producers were very good about like setting expectations for us and for the client and having us deliver on certain days. But just the nature of the clients, I think that's what it is. Also, ordinary folk tends to Jorge just doesn't like pitches. And I've always been intrigued by that idea. Pitches are so fast and they make people work weekends and overtime. And oftentimes the work, like they're not even paying for it, or it's like, like maybe they'll use that idea somewhere else. Like it's just it's unfortunate, I think. So to know, but the thing is like that's kind of how it works, right? Like pitches are what you do to get work, unless you like have people going to consistently. So I don't know how ordinary folk doesn't do. I think they just refuse to do pitches and somehow like got people to work with them still. I don't really know how all that works, and maybe some of you have insight on that because I mean, having mostly worked with ordinary folk, that's my like kind of only what I know. But I would love to hear from you guys too of like the other side of that. Like, is it invigorating? Is it like inspiration inducing? Is it overwhelming? Is it like, do you feel like used? I don't know. So
I
that's something
definitely
I think would be an
feel,
interesting
uh,
topic.
any comments people have from the chat. I mean, speaking from my own experience, I feel like it seems incredibly rare for a studio to refuse to do pitches. I think definitely it
Yeah,
speaks a lot to the quality of the work, right? And it's very
I
much
know it's
like
super rare. Yeah,
yeah, I think if you build a brand that's very like we are maybe a little bit more niche, we have a very defined style, there's more opportunity for clients who want that look to go to ordinary folk and be like, okay, you're the best at this.
I think that
Versus
makes sense because the Hornet
if
is
you're
so broad. They have so many different teams, and they hire art directors based on like their certain style. So it's like they would pitch for different stuff. Like that makes sense.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you are like, hey, we have a huge range of things we do, then you kind of need a
yeah,
pitch to tailor this is what we're offering for this project, but that's enough of
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, that makes the most sense. That's probably got to be what it is, right? Um, yeah. So it's so interesting to know that both can work. It just kind of depends, like the direction you're going for, right? Like, and how fun it is to like win a project, right? It's such a good feeling too.
I
So,
mean, it also sucks to lose a project for sometimes really stupid reasons because we'll like
oh,
to ask for
totally.
feedback on, hey, like, could you kind of tell us like why maybe you passed?
Mm,
Like, you don't always get to ask that, but if you have a good relationship with them, like they'll let you know
sure.
sometimes. But I do have another question I can field from Chris, who is asking, especially with the character designs where it's like you have multiple options of a design decision.
Yeah.
How have you approached, like, do you make a recommendation to the
Mm,
client that's like, this is our favorite, or is it really more you let the client drive, you present options?
mm. That's such a good question. I'm going to say that to every question. They're all great. Things I didn't really think of before. With my experience with ordinary folk has been um, like presenting it in a way of like explaining to them our opinion of what we think works best based on our experience and knowledge of like what we think will work. Like you know what you know, right? Like you're a professional in your field for a reason. And I guess like hoping the client would trust your judgment. And if not, knowing the implications of that too. Um, and like obviously you go for like what the client wants and needs, but you like I think we've always tried to explain to clients. For example, there was a project where 3/4 of the way through the project, the client was like, "Man, I don't think the colors are working." And that's the worst thing you want to hear, right? It's like we have so many scenes colored. It was the Spline project, so we were working with a software that was being developed in tandem of the project we're working on. You can see that project on Ordinary Folks' website. So we're making designs for 3D people who had to build these scenes in the Spline workflow, and they were working with Spline to help create tools to make some of the stuff we were using. It was so insane. And then the client was just up and like, I think we need to switch up the colors. And so we had a big internal meeting about like, okay, why do we think they're asking this? And like, how should we respond? And do we think, actually, our first question was, do we agree with the client? Like, are the colors working? And if so, or if not, why? And if so, why? And we did decide that we did choose the colors for a reason, because we usually do a color script pass. I forgot to add that. We started developing that step in our process mostly after Avicali Lomovatu came to the team and encouraged us to help us with colors. So we had it already planned specifically. It was like the difference of like replacing the blue with the purple, but it would have been everywhere, right? And it would have been chaos more than it already was. It was a chaos project. So we went to the client and we did tell them, like, okay, so here's a comparison of these scenes with this color mocked up and then with this color that you want mocked up. We believe like our first version, because we did assess truly, like we need to stop and think about, like, let's put ourselves in the client's shoes. Maybe switching the color is right, and maybe it's not. And so we had to ask ourselves that honestly. Once we figured out we don't think switching the color is right, in our opinion, we gave them the two options and we showed side by side and explained why we thought the original was working and why we thought like changing it wouldn't be right, because it didn't. And the client did end up agreeing with us. I think it was maybe like a last minute decision on their end of like, I don't know if they really had a reason to exactly change it, but more so of like a feeling. So I think after they saw our explanation and recommendation and like the fact that we did take the time to mock up their request and like compare it and talk about it, I think they appreciated that too. So that's one, for instance, of how we've approached that. Generally, yeah, we do give our recommendation, but do give them the control, ultimately. But
That is really cool to hear. And I think it definitely sounded like a very empathetic response to like a very potentially like unempathetic situation, like
I mean, we definitely had internal conversations about like, God, like what's happening? But then also like it is a really good reminder to it's very humbling too, where it's like, oh, maybe the client is right. Sometimes the client's right. The client knows their product, they know what they want, they know their colors, like they know their messaging better. And so, yeah, just to give the benefit of the doubt and just show them that you're considering what they're saying, hopefully they'll do the same for you,
Yeah. Cool.
So on this project specifically, moving on, we implemented some of these ideas and I made a clean pass of kind of like what some of the scenes could look like. And these are also sort of based on some ideas from other designers and just cleaned up a little bit. But so some of these graph shapes other designers created, and I thought, okay, I'll incorporate those to make this sort of like overwhelming, like this budget and finance is really overwhelming this character. They're having to drag this big coin around, and it's just a lot of manual labor on their end. And then Intuit comes in and just makes everything as easy as clicking a button, shows you everything, graphs it out, changes it into a different format so you can understand it better, and you see the full scale of like what you're looking at. So these were some of the finished boards. And then something I didn't have the opportunity of doing before this project was also boarding out live action sequences, which is something you guys have probably done a lot, like in the audience. I'm not really sure. It was a first for me. So I was discussing with like the director of the live action portion, and he told me what he was looking for so he could have a rough base of like what he could tell his team to do, because we had to describe to the client how to zoom into the character's head would work so that we're like quote unquote getting in their head to the animated portion. So this was sketching that out, which was a total first for me, but it was super interesting to figure out. And yeah, so nothing else on that. It was just more of a like, oh, I didn't know I'd be doing this, but here we are.
Pretty curious, like, for these kind of more clean vectory boards, are you still doing them in Photoshop or somewhere else?
It depends. I've been using Illustrator a lot for storyboarding more recently. Once Lorena Gonzalez joined Ordinary Folk, she truly is like a huge design hero of mine. Like, and her process is so clean. I never storyboarded with Illustrator before I met her. And it's so convenient because I can like grab shapes from her boards, she can grab them from my boards, and like we can move them around and stuff. But the process isn't for everybody. Like Abby, this is at Ordinary Folk specifically. Sorry, not Hornet. Lorena and Abby are at Ordinary Folk, but Abby still like loves to just purely sketch like on her iPad or her Cintiq in Photoshop and do her boards that way. And like I totally get that too, right? So I think it just depends on what you're comfortable with. I love Illustrator for that reason, but these specifically, these ones were all done in Photoshop. Sometimes I'll use shapes and then use like a brush to outline it just for like some of these cylindrical kind of shapes and everything.
Yeah.
So
Totally would have thought this was Illustrator, so I think that's good use of the tools.
oh, good. Yay. I mean, I'm pretty sure these were, yeah. Yeah, you can, I mean, if you were to really zoom in on these, some of them are real funky, so don't really look that closely. But yeah, so then I had a little time in this project to do some style exploration. And while it wasn't chosen in the end, I still had a lot of fun with these. And I don't know, the colors aren't kind of turning out as bright as they are really. But anyway, I have this on my website too. But just kind of a look of like what the chaos world could look like, and then like what the cleaner Intuit world could look like. So I think style exploration is my favorite part of the whole process. So whether they chose it or not, it was still super fun for me to do and like try some different techniques. So that was my first work with Hornet, and they're cool folks. So I hope you guys get some jobs from them. It was really cool. They have a lot of people on their team. So it's probably gonna be a different team, but super cool anyway. And the last project I have, I don't even know what time I'm on right now. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of time.
No,
I'm so
I
sorry.
still want you to show, we ate up a lot of it with some questions already, so I think you definitely should still get a good solid 5-7 minutes to cover this project, and then we'll switch back to some of the questions people have asked.
Okay, I'll keep this really quick. I don't have a lot for this one anyway, but I wanted to show this one specifically because of this was a huge pivot project. It was probably one of the most like start over ones that I've ever had. So I'll explain that here. It was a blockchain company, or is a blockchain company, and they're trying to brand themselves like different from other blockchains. Like every other blockchain is trying to stand out. So this was kind of the first like word brain graph of trying to like compare Minima to other blockchains and kind of things they were telling us that's about them. Decentralized, open, free, organic, fluid, empowerment, connectivity, diverse, open to all quality, incredible potential, scalable, blah, blah, blah. And Abby, Lorena, and myself were all working on our own versions of like what it could look like to begin with. And we all went super shapey right away. Because Ordinary Folk is very shapey. Shapes, circles everywhere. But it just ended up like, and I'm trying to remember if the client's ask was to start with something like that. All of our mood boards at the beginning were very shape centric and like hardly know any character, if any character at all. And I think the client wanted that at the beginning. I'm trying to remember because we had deliveries with that. In any case, we got to a point where this was like, nope, we really are not wanting to do something like this looks like blockchains and this looks like structures of blockchains, and we're different from that. And we're like, okay, hard stop. We need to figure this out. And we even like got to the point of doing some style explorations, and they're like, nope, like it's not working. It's not unique enough. It's not like us enough. So we had to pivot and kind of stopped in our tracks, so much so that was just like, okay, way back to the drawing board. And I think everyone felt stumped on this. There's probably a reason for it, but sometimes I think projects just go that way where it's like, okay, we totally either misread them, or they just like, maybe they had to see these ideas first to see that they didn't want it. Something happened where we're like, okay, we had to dump everything in the garbage and start totally from the beginning. And so I was just kind of going back to the drawing board of like, okay, what are they describing? what's the feeling they want to get across. And so I just made these like 4 tiny thumbnails of like this person aspiring to something, reaching for something, looking for something. And we ended up sharing these with the client in like a quick turnaround delivery of just like, okay, you told us like we needed to really change it up. What do you think of these very initial, like super rough sketches? Are these speaking to you at all? And they ended up really going for them and really liking them. And so like, okay, all right, this is our new direction. No circles, we're doing characters. No like gradients or soft like transitions, we're doing like texture and like drawing and fluidity and imperfect lines and like lighting and dramatic look. So we brought Gabriel Silvera on board. He's amazing. I learned so much from him, and I'm still like so wowed by all his work. So a lot of these boards, I kind of made an initial set of boards, and we were sort of working in tandem on the storyboard where he had sequences of ideas and then would put them with my sequence of ideas. So I think like he created like this beginning portion, and then like there's that ball I had, like that energy ball, like the node in the phone. And then like I made like the phones zoom out, they turn into starry sky, become this sort of like organized sequence, and they're talking to each other. And then it like inspires people and it wraps around people, and then they like hold it in their hands. It's just very like intimate feeling, very not blockchainy. And this is what they were looking for. So they didn't want it to feel like technical. So we ended up using a lot of like brushy brushes, which are so fun. It made it into a super fun dynamic project, something super unique to speak for them. And it ended up being one of my favorite projects to work on, especially with collaborating with Gabrielle. So yeah, that's all I got for that. And let's turn it over to questions. So sorry. I thought I wouldn't have enough, and turns out I had way too much. So I'll
No,
stop
you did
sharing.
great. First of all, I thought it was so funny that you were like, "Oh my god, like you should help drive," because you totally drove that conversation perfectly.
Well,
So
you
I
really
thought,
helped me out. You helped me to stay on track. I really was veering off at the beginning there.
no, yeah, but I already do have one question that we didn't get to from earlier, from Kai. Kielsvig. I'm sorry if I'm not saying it right, Kai. Okay, we can, if you want, we can call on you if you want to say it out loud. Otherwise, I'll just read it. I'm waiting to see if he says anything.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. All right. Um. All right. I invite you to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Local concerned citizen here. No, Chelsea. It honestly doesn't matter. Uh, my name just looks like it got thrown into a microwave, so you're good. Yeah, my question was, at Ordinary Folk, at least, are you interfacing with the client directly, or is a producer going to the table to communicate between both parties as an intermediary?
Yeah, it's a little of both. The initial meetings will be between Jorge and the producers with the client. A lot about initial steps, scripting their vision. So all of that part, I'm not part of. I was brought in as our director and designer at the point when they like were presenting initial mood boards and storyboards. Every client was different. Sometimes we would be in meetings with them depending on the client. So a lot of the projects we did with Bible Project, almost all of them, like I would walk them through the storyboard and I'd show them like what we're thinking. And so like those always made me so nervous because I was like driving the storyboard part. But most projects were not presented by me. We would be like giving them documents of our deliveries, and they would look over and give us feedback. And if we had to meet on Zoom, we would. I think Bible Project just really liked to be walked through
Yeah.
the whole thing. And I think some people would rather just like get the content and like add their notes either in the margins or like in the document, and send it to us that way. And if they had any clarifying things, they probably met with the producers, and the producers would like come back to us. So mostly it was between producers, but sometimes we would be brought in like on the design presentation part. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the answer, and thank you for sharing your work. I always love seeing what you do. You're great at it.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Cool. All right. I guess we boot we boot Kai. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, Cameron, do you want to maybe be in charge on clicking if there's hands? Is that all right? Okay. All right. I'm gonna practice giving people space because I know I have like 10 questions, but I need to give people
I'm
space to think of
I'm
questions.
refraining from asking all of you questions because I would rather know. I don't really care about what I tell you. I'd rather know like what your guys' experiences are, like everyone in the audience, like what. But you can't. That's not a productive conversation, really. But like,
Oh, that's
I
still
don't
good.
know.
I will say there was actually, Kai actually gave an answer earlier about the pitching versus not pitching, where he had
Oh,
another viewpoint where he was saying, in his experience, the person leading the studio is the one that sets the tone on whether the studio pitches.
that
And
makes
he
sense.
currently works at a place that also rarely pitches. And then he's
Oh,
worked at other places where he jokes and they say that they would have given the studio away to the client if they could have.
oh,
So
funny. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that really speaks for ordinary folk as well. Like Jorge's the driver of the boat, and he really has made the company what it is. So that makes sense. Yeah.
while people keep thinking of their own questions, one that I had is I find it super interesting how your freelance career has continued after moving to Eau Claire with your family. I think a lot of people feel that tension between, like, yeah, I have these different family needs, location needs, and wanting to have an artistic career. How have you maintained connections, maintained work?
Um, that's a hard one. It's uh I think maintain connections is like social media has helped. I mean, it's just social media is changing and it's a little tough to kind of like there's so many platforms now and it's like you don't know where to post and don't know how to engage. But I found like a lot of I mean, just with the matter of time that I have, I don't have a lot of time to have a lot of like platforms. It's like I just can't keep up with everything. It's like I just need to like see people's work in whatever way I can. So that's still been Instagram for me. But I see a lot of people are moving to Blue Sky and stuff. But um, it just like being able to just open something and see some fresh work or like add a comment of like, I really loved this or this was great. And just to like do a few DMs and, like meeting people that you wouldn't normally have talked to, that's really helped. Keeping in touch with like my work buddies has been really nice, even though it's more few and far between now. But I'm hoping to get back into it. So it feels a little bit like you have to be more intentional about it when you're not like in the hub. And I'm definitely not in the hub. I'm looking at pine trees right now. So I I think that's been a big thing is like it's a lot of virtual. Um and I'm looking forward to when I have the like focus and time to be able to like invest more into it again. Um, it's just not my season right now, and it's a little bit. I miss it, but I look forward to being able to travel to Vancouver again or travel and to like conferences. And I'd love to go to Dash Bash someday. I just can't do it right now. I hope you guys do, uh, and see all the people there. And yeah, that's where I'm at currently. But virtual really helps. COVID changed a lot of stuff for working folks. A lot of slack. So
I will say, I won't say who, but I do hear whispers around town about doing a Minneapolis motion conference someday. And
that would be sweet.
that'll take definitely like a couple good years to get off the ground, but I like putting it out there because like if we know people are more excited about that, then Nice Moves or whoever may be more able to contribute to that. So I just want to say that would be
That would
cool.
be so cool. We've
And
joked
also,
with Jorge in the past about like, so when are you doing Dash again? Or not Dash. Oh my god, the one before. Blend Fest. When are you doing Blend again? And it's like right now it's dead, but it's kind of a running joke of like, okay, like when's the next one? But someone's got to do it. It's a lot of work. I think that's why it's like it's so exhausting for everyone, but so many people appreciate it. So if any of you have the drive out there to do it, I fully support you.
also, I was gonna say, I think it's interesting. Like, yeah, you say it's not your season, and maybe you feel that way in terms of not networking or like career advancing in the traditional sense. But also, it does feel like your work is like so mature and the voice is so distinct that it's like in that sense, it's like your season is continuing. Like, I do not feel like there's a pause in the season.
Right. It doesn't feel that way, so it's good to hear. And I need to like I realize I get a little like in a weird mood if I'm not making something, and I haven't made something in a while. I've been watching Top Chef, which is amazing, but not productive in the way of drawing. So I get in like slumps of like, okay, like well, right now I'm like super tired. I've just been really tired lately, so it's like we're expecting our second, so it's just like a lot of like needing to sleep and needing to rest and feeling behind. It's a lot of feeling like I'm out of the loop. I don't know what people are doing. And like it's hard to have family and work. But it won't be forever. And it's very encouraging to hear that, Natalia. It's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I totally get you on the feeling antsy when you haven't made something in a while. I fully believe that once you hopefully get something like that out of your system soon, you'll feel better.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing a
I'm
lot of
looking forward to that feeling again.
congratulations in the
Thank you.
chat. I'm also gonna
Thank you, guys.
say, again, guys, you can totally raise your hand if you have any other specific questions for Grace. Oh, I see a hand. Okay, Cameron, you're on it.
Nice.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Also, it might be kind of dark where I'm at right now, but hey, I'm Lisa Goncharova. Well, now Laux, because I got married and I'm changing my name. But it's nice to meet you and nice to see some of you again. Hi, Kai. I just have a quick question. It was kind of a follow-up to Kai's, but you kind of answered it in your answer to his question. So, you typically do work with an art director, or you yourself kind of get hired as an art director, sort of make some of those final calls. Does that sound correct, or is there usually, sorry, my cat's kind of coming to the but
Beauty.
yeah, do you usually have like a single art director point person, especially when you were kind of mentioning that at Ordinary Folk there'd be a few of you working on the designs. Do you have somebody who's kind of making those final calls when you have more than one person working on designs?
Yeah, yeah. It would typically be like the art director, but everything's run past the whole team. So at Ordinary Folk, they're they do have the point person as the art director, but there's also the higher creative director, which is Jorge. So Jorge's in charge of like the motion direction and the art direction. And then there was an art director and a motion director or animation director. And then like all the designers, animators. So like a lot of it kind of went up the ladder. Like I would do a lot of the calls of like, okay, can you try this color? Can you try this color and see how it feels? I honestly probably looking back gave too many notes of just like, try this, can you do this? They're like maybe too specific of notes, but it was more like nitpicky stuff. And then like big calls, I would often like Jorge was very available for like concept wise, like I think this is working and maybe this isn't working so much. But he always gave a lot of space to be like, and what do you think? And he'd encourage like, what is your opinion? Um, so that's kind of how it worked at Ordinary Folk. The creative director always like made the final decision, but relied on the animation and art director for like giving notes to the designers and animators to keep going on their work, to keep producing and keep adjusting things for the final and the vision. And then he would chime in with anything additional he would have, or like push back on something I maybe made a note of, or maybe he'd be like, yep, whatever Grace said, like do what she said type of thing.
Thank you. That answered my question for sure. I appreciate the insight, and yeah, I ditto to what Kai was saying. Your work is beautiful, and it's just so lovely to see the I like just how you kind of work with colors is just really beautiful. And so I don't want to steal Maddie's question, but if Maddie wants to hop on and ask it, but it was something I also was wondering about color scripts. I'll give Maddie a second to respond. I don't know if you want to ask it or if you'd like me to.
I see Maddie typing. I'm also appreciating
Yeah.
the cat camera time.
Yeah, this is Marcy. Yeah. More of a comment than a question. Okay, so my question was, when you say color scripts, what do you mean exactly? I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, it's basically taking the storyboard and adding some rough color to it, like rough color, just to kind of see like what colors are we starting out on, what are we transitioning to, and why. Like maybe the middle portion where it's kind of being figured out or resolved is like lighter tones with more blue. And the beginning was like a lot of like dark blue, or maybe there's more yellow at the end to represent like, or maybe it's the brand colors coming in more. Like it kind of depends. But just to kind of give us a little bit of more of a framework for once we bring the storyboard into design, the designer who's assigned that shot has a little bit more direction on like how to take that color wise so that it all fits. Like having the color script allows us to see the full sequence of the animation with like roughly what the colors will look like beginning to end without having to color each frame, if that makes sense.
What does that look like then in terms? Is it like
Yeah,
like a little palette nearby, or is it like sort of filled in?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you were to just take a screenshot of the storyboard, bring that into Photoshop and like dab it with color, like, and then you can make like different versions of like, okay, this beginning, we're going to try a light, like pastel color beginning and see how it feels, and then move into darker or like switch it. So just to basically it's like maybe Maddie can explain this better. I feel like I'm not like describing it very well. I don't even have a good example. Maybe Ordinary Folk has some on their website.
I was gonna say, I will go screenshot an Ordinary Folk color script while other people continue talking.
Any, it's not all the same. Abby is our color script master, so like I'm really probably not the one to even describe it. She kind of brought that to the team. Yeah, Maddie, go ahead and tell us or show us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So from what I understand, a color script can be a way, like companies like Pixar and things like that use it to sort of develop mood. And like, yes, it can be like, I'm thinking about one in particular that I always, when you Google color script, like the one for Finding Nemo comes up pretty quickly. Yeah, so it's a rough outline of color. Yeah, it's a rough outline of color, and it's also a rough outline of like the mood you want to set for each individual. Like as it goes on, it can be a great way to like visualize how the mood changes in a scene. Like starts out bright and sunny, and gets dark and sad with blues, and like sometimes brand can come into it. Other times, that's why I was surprised to see a color script, because a lot of the times when you're using brand colors, there's not really a whole lot of room to color script, because you're like, okay, well, I have to keep things like blue and yellow, and if I'm lucky, they'll let me put some pink in, because that's what I always try for.
Yeah. This book, by the way, is The Art of Pixar. So I know I just realized you're recording this, and I just showed this book that I probably shouldn't have, but
oh, I think that's fine. It's totally fine because it's like camera footage of the thing. It's like different.
You can't see it very well, but it's an example of Maddie described it perfectly. It's actually funny that you mentioned that, Maddie, with like the branding colors, because it's like, yeah, that's what we're given. So we like use those, but we did on that mainframe piece, we brought on Elle Michalka, who is a designer for
so
like
cool.
Netflix and stuff. Yeah. She was wonderful. And the way she approached it was like very much mood oriented. So that's the way you're supposed to do it, right? But unfortunately, we didn't use a lot of the stuff because we had brand colors. So what we've been doing is like color scripting with like the brand colors. But not all the time. Not everyone has brand colors to use, or they trust us to kind of manipulate them a little bit. But Elle's boards were so cool because they brought like the narrative like look to it of like Pixar. It was like Pixar. It was so cool. She was amazing. It was a little bit too like, I think, narrative driven for the client. Narrative driven being like too Netflix. But she works for Netflix, so it's like that's how it works.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you for describing that, Maddie. That was so helpful. A lot better than my description.
All right.
Thank you.
Looks like Kai wants to hop in.
I love this. I like this conversational feel. We're learning from each other. This is great.
I was like, I know that I had talked about switching to the Gather Town thing after this, but honestly, I didn't expect this format to work pretty well for shuffling people in and out of conversation. So I'm currently leaning towards just continuing to hang out here.
This. I probably can't do the Gather thing, but I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, Grace, we're technically at your, guaranteed time. So, but I just mean to say, so you can head out whenever, but as long as you're willing to stay, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, I have a little more time. I'm not in a strict schedule. Thanks to my husband for putting my girl down.
I'd see more Cat, yay.
Yeah, I'm cool too. Grace, something that I've seen a lot on our Discord channel and even in person meetups, something that you touched on before about knowing people from ordinary folk and just being friends with them first. I see a lot of people say that I'm applying to this job and I'm applying to all these jobs and I just can't get anything. Can you talk about sort of the soft skills and just being friends with people first before you're even like, hey, maybe let's work together? Because I think that's something that I didn't know when I was coming out of film school, and I feel like is lost on a lot of people. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I honestly, it's like, I think going into situations without expecting anything. Like, I think getting to know people for like the work they do and like genuinely connecting with them on without sort of having like a motivation to be like, hey, like I love your work. I know you're working for blah blah blah. It's like I knew Greg before when he worked with what company? Open Book in Minneapolis, and it was like a kind of graphic designy place.
Tiny. He was like the only person there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, doing motion. And I even applied to them and I didn't get the job. But I mean, like, I don't even know if I think that was after he left there, but I knew him before I even knew about Open Book. So it was more of like hey, like, we're both working on this side project together. Like, let's chat. It was more of like not trying to get my foot in the door specifically. It was just like growing a network and connecting with people genuinely because you're a fan of their work. And it just maybe happened to lead into like situations. My mentor, Amy Schmidt, had a connection with Andy Reynolds, who ran Motion 504, and she brought my name up to him. And I think that's how I got my first interview there. So like even that was totally blind. Like I wasn't expecting that as well. But just to have had Amy as a mentor and just connect with her on some things, it just sort of happened organically. So I think maybe the thing is like just kind of connect with people who you love, like you love their work and you get along with them, and maybe something will come of it. And maybe just not expecting that something will, but it might. You just don't know. So kind of keeping your foot in the door of keeping conversations going, and seeing what comes of it.
I'm sorry that everyone just disappeared without Grace maybe being told what was happening.
I was a little like, oh.
It was like people were just saying like, oh, like, you know, like you can boot me like that, you know, the speaking is done. But
It's fun to see everyone.
it was like Cameron, return to the. No, I'm kidding.
I
Okay,
wanted to
like
put it
that.
out there. They said they wanted it. I was like, okay, they can still hear you. So they still heard everything you were saying.
Right. I do have. I feel like obviously, if people wanted specific. Oh yeah, first of all, it's like I can clarify that people can hang out with their camera off. By the way, if somebody wanted to ask a question that way, but then you can still be, you know, in the convo. The other thing, I did have another question, which is something I'm very interested in like, and I think most people that end up in the sort of 2D animation side of things, you know, we start through drawing, right? And then we get involved with some aspect of the motion industry later. And I'm curious about how your approach to drawing has evolved. Like you obviously have a very strong illustrative style that you've developed over time. Is that something that you consciously practice? Like, were you like, okay, I'm gonna do a bunch of master studies of other great motion design works, or like, how did you approach
Is this like a question of like, how'd you get to your style?
that? Sort of, but I meant to say more specifically, like, how did you get used to potentially drawing in a commercially friendly way versus obviously, you know, the way that we maybe draw in our sketchbooks or on our own is its own thing?
Um, I think that probably just developed out of like the need of the project. Um, and it's a hard one.
No worries. Sorry, I keep throwing these abstract ones
No,
at
it's
you.
great. It makes me think. It's better than like, you know, just an obvious, like it's good for me to think about this.
I guess, like, I agree with you in that. Like, I think I storyboard, right, like in a more commercial style, also due to just like the work pressures given upon you, where it's
Yeah.
like you know you need to match the look presented to you. But yeah, I was curious if there was just anything in your own time you did to support that, or if it was literally just do it on the job. That's how you learn how to do it.
I think, yeah, it was kind of learn on the job, but then also realizing like I did just admire a lot of the work of the people doing jobs like that. And so it was sort of like a want to try to do work like those people, you know, like realizing, oh, they're working with a really limited palette and their character blends into the background because they're using 3 colors. I love that. I want to try that. Or they're using a lot of overlays and stuff. Ooh, that's cool. I want to try that. And I think like it is fun to do just personal work because you can like add as much or take away as much as you want to versus like commercial. You have restraints of like, okay, we actually got to animate this stuff. So we're really gonna have to work with like 3 colors or like no characters or whatever. Or just the matter of the project is like how much can you get away with and have it still work and be conceptual, like just for the want like of something more sophisticated and like less I don't know, a lot more like abstract. It just depends. I think I learned to like it from the work I was doing. But there's still a lot of stuff like I don't think I fully understand. It's like I think that just what I mean by that is some things over my head because they're too abstract, and I do love like details and drawing hands and faces and like you know, like I did this like flower ballerina piece just on my own, and I just loved like tiny like dot of sunshine and like which isn't does not lend itself well to animation, but I get to do that in my free time. Um, but there are elements of the work I do for work that I do learn a lot from, and I do really admire and like look back on that and it's like, wow, the creative direction to just do something very limited and abstract was the right way to go, and it was a cool thing to try. And maybe I do want to try that in more work. So it's maybe sort of a back and forth. Like
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like in a way you're definitely in the right industry because it sounds like a lot of the work that personally inspires you is very related to the commercial work you're doing. I think
I think
my question
so.
was probably born more from like I'm sure there's some of us out there where it's like, oh, I'll be like really inspired by maybe like French graphic novels or styles that
Yeah,
are like totally separate from what I am doing commercially, and
that's
then
good.
that
I think that's a good
yeah.
thing. That's something I'm trying to learn more to do, to be honest, is like, because that's where Abby really inspired me, is like she came from a background of working as an emergency room nurse, and she didn't go to art school, and she didn't um like she did some online classes, and she just always loved painting, and so that's her background, is like just admiring painting. And she stumbled upon Ordinary Folk, and Jorge hired her straight from being a nurse, and she's
Oh,
doing amazing stuff. So that's her experience, and she brings inspiration of these like paintings and thinking very abstractly. And that challenges me a lot because my experience was like admiring motion right away and like always loving art. And I did love art history, but I do feel a little bit like I I should reference that stuff more. And a lot of like we have an inspiration channel on the Ordinary Folks Slack where people just post things that they inspire them, and a lot of them are just like random, like a Renaissance painting or an Impressionist painting or like contemporary artists and things like that. And it boggles my mind, and it's good to have those outside influences. And I do feel a little like I need to more at that stuff. So it's good that you're doing that. Like that's a it's I think it's necessary. Yeah.
don't give me too much credit, but that was super interesting to hear. And it kind of leads into a different question I had, which is I'm struck by, especially when working with, let's say, a lot of different tech brands, right? Where you're interpreting a lot of times a very similar story, right? Okay, before there was chaos, and then there came cleanliness and order and ease. And I could totally see how, as a visual person, like not reusing a lot of the same visual metaphors could be tricky, like how to make it unique to each project. Is that something that you think about? Like, do you end up, yeah, again, going to these outside sources for inspiration? What do you do to shake it up?
Yeah, it takes a lot of people, I think, like with different perspectives and like different visions. And I think that's where the creative director comes in too, of like they're a creative director for a reason. Like they can connect dots that you wouldn't have thought would go together. And I think that kind of helps lead the team, and also being open enough to trust your team on like, okay, like this is the challenge. Like we got to try and find something new and fresh. Like that Minima project, for example, was a big like, okay, we're going in what we're used to. We're doing what we're used to, and it's not working. What do we do now? Like, um, so I guess just knowing how to like trust that you can help each other. Like
Yeah.
and it is a challenge to not fall into the same you're right, it's like the same message in many, many pieces. It's like the client trying to stand out from the competition, but they're kind of doing the same thing. And they're all doing the same thing, especially from a perspective of like, I don't know how blockchains work. Like, I need to figure out like roughly how to represent this, but they still want it to be different somehow. So, um, I think like and that's where inspiration comes in a lot too, right? Like having like channels and methods and resources to kind of be like, okay, what if we did it all painterly? Like, what would that look like? Or I really liked this cool motion thing where it was just like a low frame rate and then things just sort of transformed, and like, what can we do to play off of that? So I think a lot of the mood boards and inspiration finding, that's where a lot of that comes in. What we've been doing recently is using a lot of like Miro and so many softwares like that, Figma and all that kind of stuff, to just work in the same canvas, and you each have a little corner, and then you can like comment on other stuff or move things around just for that initial like. Not everyone works that way. More people, like some people do more in those in Miro than others do, but just to see where people are drawing their inspiration. And it really helps too to have like the creative director have their own set of inspiration first and then be like, okay, this is what I was thinking. Now you guys jump off from here and add or subtract, and then getting his feedback or her feedback on, or their feedback on like the, on like all the different posts people of like what they found. So I think it's a lot of collaborative back and forth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also feel like it is way easier to think of something new with other people involved because your own brain is going to come up with a lot of similar things, I find. And
yeah, it's easy to get stuck in a box. And I think I feel a little, how do I describe it? Like, not ashamed, maybe a little inferior of like same thing every time, or I'm not like doing anything fresh or new. What am I adding? Like, how is this new? Like, will anyone find this cool? Like, why am I making this? Like, there's like all the questions kind of go through to prevent you from like making new stuff. And I noticed you just finished your own piece, Natalia, like with your own style, and like I give you a lot of kudos for that, because accomplishing that kind of thing with all these outside influences and all these questions running around of like, should I even be like, is this important? Like, it's a lot.
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think like with like like the personal film I just finished, I was like weirdly lucky, you could say, in a way, in that I like wrote and boarded the film actually in my last few years of college, and then it just took me like 4 years to finish it. So in that sense, like I conceptualized it during a time where I was at the University of Minnesota. I wasn't in a commercial setting. I made a very kind of experimental, like it's a poem that I wrote from my heart, like kind of film. And then I just had to stick with it, like for the next like 5 years. And I had a lot of moments where I was like, this is pretentious, this sucks, no one's gonna like it, like what am I doing? But I think again, it worked out for the best because I acquired a lot of technical skill during the time that I was finishing it. So I finished it to like a way higher quality than I would have as a college student. But the like concept of it is like very pure of heart to my own interests and tastes in a way that I appreciate, because I feel like now sometimes I sit down to draw and every make project I've ever worked on is like in my brain, and also all the critiques of being in a adult professional setting are there. So it's hard to tap back into the original creation mood, right, that brings you into this business. So
I think it's hard. I've been having such a back and forth, especially since like kind of doing part-time freelance, and then I'm going to be taking a break again. But I didn't really have like portfolio work when I was working full time, and then like going freelance, you need a portfolio. People need to see what you do, right? And then having a crisis of, oh gosh, I worked on all these things. They all look so different from each other. And like, what do I include? What don't I include? But most importantly, what do I want to be hired for? Like, what's the work that I want to do? Like, what do I want to be working on? Do I want to showcase like projects in which we use like a lot of shapey stuff? Like, it kind of depended, like, how much do I have to do in this project and then this project? Like, what projects I'm really proud of? What do I feel like ended up being really good projects? Like, it's, I'm still in that sort of mode of like trying to find what I want to do and like get hired for it.
I think I will say, first of all, I think it's a great problem to have a diverse portfolio and be like, how can I curate this more like thoughtfully?
I know. Yeah, it takes time to do that.
Yeah. But also like, I think I'm sure in a way it can be scary. I know it can be scary too to try to like narrow focus or basically, identify yourself as an artist to other people. But
like, does anyone else have this problem, or is it just me?
I see people furiously typing. I was also gonna say, like that pivot on that Minima project, to me, like, I think that really speaks a lot to what you do as an artist, because I really do think that that new direction is so much stronger than the original one, right? And it did have that
You needed
advantage
it.
of not looking like an ordinary folk project. I think Ordinary Folk is such a funny example because their work was like it was so iconic and so beautiful that it feels like almost every other tech ad for a while started looking like that. So then people coming to Ordinary Folk as a studio want them to make something that will differentiate them from their competitors, thereby not looking like an Ordinary Folk project. And again, I think Minima is such a success in that way, to be like, wow, you guys could pivot and you, like, found a direction for it. And so I just mean to say, in that sense, I think I wish you could just put this talk on your website and people would just hire you off of that, because I know I 100% would hire you off of your ability to pivot to a new look.
Oh, well,
and a
thank
new
you.
version. But I know that can be tricky on whether you want your portfolio to show the pivotiness, or if you want your portfolio to be more focused. It is what it is.
It is, yeah. It's like, and then I do have to say, like, I can't be credited for the pivot either. It's like, I wouldn't have chosen to pivot, right? Like, you get so attached with what you're working on, and it's like, gotta get rid of it, like, because they said so. And it's like, but it's so much better for it. It's true. So it's like the outside feedback is so necessary and so disheartening in the moment. And you feel like, why am I even a designer? I should not be doing this. They don't like my work. No one likes anything I do. So I'm going to quit. And it's like, okay, step back and take a deep breath and be like, okay, they need something different.
Like, we're leaving the industry. We're gonna move to the woods. I'm never not doing this again.
I'm one step in the right direction. I'm already in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad I'm not alone in that. And I figured I wasn't, but it's hard to talk about because it's like you don't know for sure if people are feeling that way, and
I mean,
and what they do with that.
I was gonna say, I think also, I was just gonna say, I think I relate to things just a bit differently, since I come more from the, like, it's funny because we both storyboard, but I would say we storyboard in like completely different lanes.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm storyboarding a lot of times, like, on things that are not very motion designy at all, and it's like a completely different, much more cinematic language, usually live action based language, not very beautiful transitions, which is why I think it's funny that my personal film is all like kind of motion graphics-y beautiful transitions. Not that anybody can see it yet, but whenever it comes out. Anyways, I just mean to say, I get really attached to the writing side of things. I almost never care too much when they change the visual direction. I get really upset when they're like, we want the character to do this. And I'm like, oh my God, do they know what they're doing? No! Anyways.
So interesting. I have such an admiration for writers, truly. I just don't know how to do it. It's magic. I'm so excited to see scripts because it's just like magic in words. And I think it's a little frustrating when the client has 10 million changes to the script so that you're like halfway through storyboarding by the time they're done with the script. And it's like, man, we just already drew that. And now they want to take it out. And now it doesn't work. And now it doesn't flow well. And it's just like, that part is so frustrating. But if it lands in the right spot, it's better to just have a done script and then start storyboarding versus like in tandem. But so often I've worked on projects where like the scripting ends up being in tandem to storyboarding because the client keeps wanting to change the script.
Yes. I will say, okay, I'll give people in the audience like one last chance to pipe in if anybody had a developing question. Otherwise, in the next maybe like 5 minutes, we'll wrap up and, say goodbye to Grace, let her go to her family. But, while people maybe, cook on another question or not, I'll say, like, I think one of the curses of the fact that I'm a writer / board artist is I actually get put in that position all the time where in a way you can almost abuse this privilege of I'm scripting and boarding at the same time. So I can be halfway through boards and like change the script as I'm doing it for them. It's the whole thing.
That's really interesting. That's so interesting.
It's terrible. I don't recommend it. Because, again, you're just like, come on, guys. We agreed on Act 2 like a month ago. I already drew it. Like, let's do it. But,
Yeah.
that's just commercial. Yeah, I agree. I really appreciate, again, like seeing the pivots from an external point of view. It's like you said, when you're the one doing it, I think it can be really hard to lean in. But from the outside, yeah, like looking at your circumstances, I'm like, yeah, like I actually do get it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it also really
great creative direction. You need that like strong creative director with the vision of like, okay, he's listening to the client, he's recognizing that we needed a change, the client's telling him we need a change, and then just to like trust your team of like, okay, they're not liking this or this, what can you come up with? So then I had the freedom to go in and be like, all right, what do I think it needs based on what the creative direction is on the pivot that they told us. So it's a lot of like trust and a lot of like helping each other out too, and a lot of honest feedback.
Well, if you want to curate your portfolio in some way and drop it in the Nice Moves show and tell and ask people like, what vibes is my portfolio giving you? Like, you can always use the community for feedback in that way.
That's good to know. Sure.
Yeah, like, if you were curious, I know, like, yeah, if you're just struggling with the shaping identity part of it or wanted external feedback in any way, yeah.
Mostly it's been challenging to kind of figure out like what format I want to show it, because it's like I think I know the projects now. Like I finally landed on the projects that like I think I do want to show and go forward more with. But then it's like a lot of them look really different from each other. So if they're in a grid, I feel like it looks awkward. So like, but so many people have like grids. But then I was like, well, I kind of just like looking at one at a time. So I think I sort of laid out on a system that works, but it's not my favorite. So it's all just like, yeah. Oh, thank you, Lisa. That's great. I kind of.
It sounds like what you're describing is just having a grid for the project header, and then you can click on it and everything is organized within that project page. But obviously, I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think I got it into a spot. Like I kind of had to do it quickly after baby, and then now I just don't really have a lot of time to do it. And I think I feel good about it right now. But like that was like my big thing to figure out. And it's still not perfect. I think the ideal, and maybe it's just the perfectionist in me, is like I think just my ideal would be to like have everything look good together. Like Mark Conlon, for an example, amazing illustrator, just redid his website, and I was just following that, and it was like he works with a lot of blues, a specific blue, and so many of his projects for different clients involve this blue, and his whole like front page has a lot of those blues in it, so he can have his like little name thing with that blue, and like so it's like a defining thing. And I think it's like I don't feel like I have a defining thing. Like I think that's maybe more of like the I don't know, but to each his own is like, maybe I'll develop that. Maybe it's just, I don't know if I'm developed there. I think it's just these like, it feels like random client projects, which I'm proud of. But when they, like, you see them all together, it's like, oh, one's painterly and one's like bright neon colors. Yeah.
That is interesting because, yeah, I would say, like, obviously, I agree with the chat a bit where it's like if I had to try to be like, oh, what's your vibe? It's like definitely really soft, grainy gradients plus like really bold lighting, very like cinematic lighting on a very like soft object is what I would say.
Well, Lisa just said you might not see it yourself, and that's probably actually. Now that I think about it, I think I've heard that before too, like from one other person of like I think you do have a style, and I was like, what do you mean I have a style? I don't feel like I do, but maybe it's just a matter of like our industry feels like you're doing something so different every time without realizing you might have a style anyway. Or maybe you don't need one. Anyway, it's a whole other own conversation.
I do
Too
think
far
the
off from what
blue
we're already
guy,
talking about.
if you could repeat his name clearly enough to like spell it.
Oh, the illustrator I mentioned?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, Mark
Yeah.
Conlon.
Yeah, just because I think like the blue, that's like a really extreme but clear example, right? Of like this guy's got his thing. Like, and I love that color is like such a common example of it too, because I always love like the color theory books that talk about like basically there was like a really good artist book that I read a long time ago. I can't remember the title, but all the sections had like really detailed advice, you know, on how to master line and shape and like value. And then it got to color and it was like, listen, there's nothing I can tell you about color. All you can do is look at colors that you like, and you will naturally be drawn to some of them. And your job is to lean in. And like, he just did a really good job of breaking down traditional painters where you can really clearly see that, right? So, like, the example being like, when you look at Edgar Degas painting, it has this like really iconic teal color that he was drawn to. When you look at these like Dutch Renoir, like I think that's some of these like where it was like, oh, he just really liked brown ochre and very muted, moody color palettes and almost no pops of color. And it's like it's just as beautiful as Degas doing his bright pops of color, and it just becomes a part of their iconic look, what they're drawn to. But you're working with branded commercial palettes. Like we just talked about how you can't use the colors you're drawn to anyway. So
exactly. I think that's the thing. It's like, so maybe it's more of an encouragement to like just add more personal work in there, and like that'll help develop your look, and that's what people will hire you for. And I think maybe that's my goal is like do more work that I do personally love to do versus like I do love branded work, but mostly because it pays the bills, right?
Yeah.
Versus like you said, your personal project is not anything you do for commercial work right now.
Yeah.
How cool would it be if you could be doing that for the future? And that's where you put your portfolio, and then it'll show, you know, like that's your look, that's your thing, that's what you do, and that's what people will hire you for. So I guess maybe that's more toward what I'm leaning toward. It's just right now I have like so many branded commercial projects and not enough like developed personal projects to kind of show that. I think more of like personal projects in the sense of like as being robust as a commercial project. Commercial projects, you have the animatic, you have the full animation, you have the boards, you have the style frame. And the personal, it's like, I made this illustration because I liked this song, or like these colors because I feel like spring. It's like, oh, and that's it. So it's like, that doesn't really seem like a project. So it goes in my play portion of my website. It's like, then it's hiding, and you know, so.
I appreciate so much you being willing to like, have this public conversation about like where you're at, because I think these kinds of like, I guess maybe more mid-career exploratory conversations people don't get to hear very much, right? I think from the outside, it can be very much like everyone's got their shit together. I don't know what's going on. And I think exactly what you're talking about is like, I think the steps that everyone's always thinking about at every stage of their career, like I've talked to a lot of other art director and like higher level people in our community that are also saying, I'm really interested in what my personal work voice is.
That is so good to know.
Like,
you don't know until people talk about it.
I mean, basically, our previous Nice Move talk with Emery Allen was pretty much this exact same thing, where he was like, you know, he's like in his 40s. He's been an amazing creative director all this time. He's like, you know, I think I really figured out that humor is like a really primary component of my brand. Like, you know, so
that's such a good self-realization. Maddie, that's a good comment. It's like, that's so true. And I think that's what maybe I get fed up with like social media sometimes, is that like the curated sides of profiles, I just immediately am so turned off, because maybe it's a sense of like, I wish my life was that put together, and it's just not. Like, but then I follow this one lady, Emily Vondi. It's just a mom of going on 6 kids, which, wow, bless her. But she has a house with 80s flower carpet, and old oak cabinets that she has in every video, and it's not perfect. There's kids who poop on the floor and you got to clean it up. And there's like toddlers who are bringing you Barbies with like peanut butter in their hair. And, you know, it's like real life. And I'm so much more attracted to people just being real and like telling you where they're at and not being like fake. But maybe they aren't. Maybe they truly have their lives put together. And I'm so happy for them. I just don't relate to that. So it's just like so much more refreshing to me to have conversation and talk about like, is anyone else feeling the same thing? It's like, or maybe it's like, I do feel like my portfolio is more together. Like, I think I spent time on it and I feel good about like the choices I made, or I'm making more personal work that I really love, or now I'm just in a crisis where I just finished this job and I'm just not like feeling like I have a style and I'm lost. And like, I don't know. And that can happen at any point in your career. And yeah, or personal life.
I know I keep being like, I keep letting the conversation go on, but it's so good. And I just accept that people will leave when they want to leave. So, but yeah, like I think those ups and downs are so true, and then nobody sees them because sometimes I don't know if other people struggle with this. I struggle with posting those updates because sometimes it almost feels egotistical to give the updates when you feel like no one's asking. Like in terms of
Yeah.
So one good example of that would be, let's say if you were to check in with Natalia in December of 2024, right? So like what, 4 months ago, I would have been like, I said I was going to finish my film in time for this festival in September. I totally blew past that deadline because I had to move and the moving was crazy. And then I got COVID and oh my God. And I was like, and this film I was like, that film was supposed to be my graduation thesis film. So it's like, I had this whole like death spiral in my head that was like, you know, actually, even though I've worked professionally full time for 3 years, I'm not a real artist because I've never finished a real personal film, and everyone else around me has a personal film, and I don't have any documentation of my personal voice, and it's never going to come together. Everyone thinks I'm a fraud. Anyways, I finished the film after doing nothing else, basically all of January. I like submitted to film festivals. I'm like putting clips online now. And it's like a complete 180. I'm like, wow. Actually, it was grit and determination that let me finish this. You know, like other people maybe, like before I would have been like, the fact it took so long is such a huge stain on my reputation and
right.
my work.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, no, the fact it took so long is like a testament to I was working full time and taking care of my health, and the fact that it's like, okay, I still finished it. And now I'm like on a high point of like, oh my God, if I made that, I can make anything. So I have like 3 other personal projects cooking outside of work right now. I'm working on like a children's show pitch, which is like completely unrelated to anything I do at work, which is like gritty adult nonsense. Nonsense is bad. I'm going to say, like,
I get it.
We'll be working on, like, something with action and blood and hard edges and clean polish at work. And it's like, I'm working on a children's show pitch that looks like the colored pencil, like, Soviet.
Love it. Fluffy.
Like, anyway, so I guess what I mean to say is it's like, and this is like all within 1 year, right? And like nobody on the outside knows I've like had this like dramatic inner artistic journey that much, right? But yeah.
And I think we got to celebrate the wins too. It's like we got to celebrate when your life's put together too, right? Like because you had the down, and just knowing that, like, because it's also disheartening to follow people who are always like, my life is terrible. You're also going to follow them, right? It's like it's celebrating the wins with people and also like empathizing in the downs, because we all have the ups and downs. And like I also need to watch myself, and like, and my husband is really good at challenging me in this, of like not being stuck in the negative and expecting the worst, because I feel like when I expect the worst, I'm protecting myself from the worst. But really it's putting me in a mindset of dwelling on the worst when it could be the best, and I just don't know it. Like maybe our girl's going to wake up 3 times tonight, and that was always my mind space, is like I need to be prepared, which it would help to go to bed earlier, is to be prepared in case she gets up 3 times tonight. And then he'd say, what if she sleeps through the night? she could sleep to, like, go to bed tonight thinking she'll sleep through the night. And it's like approaching that with work too is like someone was talking about cold, like, or connections, right? And like connecting with people for work stuff. It's like you could go into it thinking like they're never going to email me back, or like this conversation will never turn out to be productive, versus like maybe go into it thinking like I'm going to connect with this person because I really love their work. Maybe it'll lead to something, maybe it won't, but like it's better to reach out than not to reach out, you know? And just to kind of be optimistic in that and share those moments with people of like, yeah, I did this today. Like I finished my film after a month, you know? All the while recognizing like where you were at when you didn't, you felt so bad about not finishing your film, but how much more you can celebrate after finishing it.
I was gonna say, I thought it was so interesting that you opened this talk saying you were relieved it was virtual because you're like, I would have been so nervous in person. But you're such a competent speaker. So I hope you take that away with you. But there really
it helps
wasn't
to just talk like conversation versus like I'm on a stage and you're in the audience. Like it levels the playing field a little bit, I think. But I really appreciate this talk. I really appreciate everything we've gone over. And honestly, this part has been my favorite because I can learn from you guys and like hear what your experiences are. And like one of the things about not like being Eau Claire and also being mom a lot lately has been like I felt so disconnected of like from like conversations like this, like what other people's experiences are and what's happening right now in the industry, which is like not amazing. AI sucks. So like it's just good to just chat about this stuff every once in a while. It's refreshing for me. I feel like I have a new energy after this and like being inspired by you guys. And yeah, I knew I needed to kind of get into some more personal work here soon. So I think it'll give me a little bit more drive to do that. And I also have to hop off too because I think it's getting to that time as well.
No worries. Okay, sorry. Lisa, did you have like a super quick thing you wanted to say?
I was just gonna say that the only thing I have to think about too is that like when people get to see just like little glimpses of you, more likely than not, they're just excited to cheer you on and support you. And I think like that thought has helped me a lot through like imposter syndrome time. So hopefully that helps.
Such a good.
We're cheering for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And same. Find me on Instagram. And I think I know I'm Maddie and all of you guys. I would love to let's connect. Yeah, I know Discord is what you guys talk on. I'll try to engage. Like I said, there's only so many things I can handle at the moment, but I hope I can connect with people somewhere. So
yeah, I think this is a good place, but we can also definitely drop, Instagrams and things like that. Do you want people to, Grace, like DM you their Instagram?
You sure can. Yeah, like you can just DM and be like, hey, we were just in the talk. And, yeah, I love that. No problem.
The only note I'll say about that is if you're not an experienced Discord user, you may need to like agree to add friend before you can see the message sometimes and stuff like that. So just know that you'll need to check your messaging settings after this.
Totally. And I also am not on my like phone or Discord or whatever a lot too. So it's like I'll try and check when I can. The thing I check most is Instagram. I understand people are moving from Instagram, so it's probably not the most helpful thing. But I also don't know how to navigate other stuff, and I don't have the energy to learn it right now. I will at some time. It's just, but I'll keep my eye on the Discord when I can. So if I don't answer you for a while, don't be offended. It's just, I just don't check it a lot. So.
Well, thank you to everyone who came again. This was really wonderful. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, everyone. This is a huge honor. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much, Grace.
Bye.